Okay, today we're going to start getting to know the work area, lesson 1 in your book. And I have actually pulled up the first one of the first files in your lesson 1 that's available to you. And in this lesson, you're going to learn how to adjust your interface brightness, work with the tools panel, work with panels, reset and save your workspace, use viewing options to show different magnification views, navigate multiple artboards and documents, explore document groups, and using resources. So anyways, just a quick discussion on Illustrator. Illustrator is what we refer to as a vector graphics program. It's different from Photoshop, whereas Photoshop is a pixel-based program. Illustrator works with vector graphics that are made up of lines and curves, and which follow a mathematical theory. The nice thing about creating artwork in Illustrator is that it retains its resolution or its sharpness from being a very small graphic to blowing the graphic up to the size of a billboard, say. And so because of this, we, especially when we're working with employers' documents, such as whether they want a business card or a poster or a billboard made, we can take something like this graphic and the text, which are vector-based, and we don't have to worry about them losing resolution as we increase or decrease the size. So anyways, in Illustrator, you have different areas which you want to know about. And basically you have your application bar up here in the top, and this has your various drop-down menus such as, File. This is where you're going to be saving items and opening documents, etc. You have your edit drop-down menu where you copy, paste, and work with editing and transforming objects. In the object drop-down menu, you can also work at like transforming, rotating, sending back objects back to front, forward to backward, expanding, working with different paths, shapes, etc. And then we get into the type, and this concerns the type that you work with. In the drop-down select menu, this will have, all these commands will have to do with selection of objects. And then you get into effect, and these can apply various artistic effects such as blur and stylize and sketch and warp, etc. to your objects. And then the view panel allows you to have different views on your artboard here. So for example, if I have want to view all my artboards at the same time, I can do that here. I can also look at proof colors, I can hide edges, etc. Anything that has to do with viewing my work in Illustrator can be found here. The window drop-down menu is very important as well, because this is the menu where you're going to also locate any panels that aren't open. And my computer is being a little funny here. So the panels are what we have over here to the right of our work area, and they provide different options that I can use alongside my tools to do various operations on my artboard. And so for example, if I wanted to have my stroke panel open, it is showing me that there's no check in front of it, and if I click on this, the stroke panel, which is right here, will show up and allow me, and I can actually pull that panel out. You can see that the stroke panel actually came up with 3 other panels: symbol, brushes, and transparency, all which have their own operations. And so that, anyway, so the window drop-down menu is where you'll find all these panels. And then, of course, you have your help section here. Now, again, as I showed you, the panels are all, you're able to separate them. I can close them up and put them back into just little thumbnails. And I can actually dock them in the thumbnail area over here. Open this. Okay, so sorry about that. My computer's a little bit slow today, so there's going to be some hesitations here when I show you some applications. But anyways, as you can see, when I clicked on the color guide here and clicked on the little bottom arrow with the little lines right here in the upper right hand area of this panel, you'll see various options that also go along with this panel. And every panel it gives you that option to that's specific to whatever it is the operation is intended for with your artwork. We also have the tool panel over here. And in the tool panel, you can view it as a single column or a double column by clicking the little arrows here. And you can also move your tool panel to whatever area you want. Now, if I move this over to the left, basically in Illustrator, you have a place where we can dock it. And if you see, as I go to the left here, it has a blue line that comes up. I can dock that right there. Just as my option bar here, I can actually move the option bar out as well so that it's free floating. Maybe I want to have it nearer to the artwork I'm working with, or I can bring it back up again until you come up with the blue line. You can then dock it. Okay, so when I go to a different tool, for example, I've got the direct selection tool, and you can see how the option bar is now based on this direct selection tool. For example, if I go to the rectangle tool and make a rectangle, you'll see that the option bar has also changed for this particular tool that I use, and so forth. And so this is just something you want to realize. Again, the option bar can be docked back up at the top, and it is specific to every tool you use. The other thing about the tool panel as well is if you notice that some of these tools have little right arrows in the right lower corner. And if you hold down on your mouse on those tools, you'll see that you have optional selections here under that tool. Okay, if it doesn't have the little arrow underneath, it doesn't have any more options. Another nice feature about Illustrator is that you have what we call this little tear-off bar. So if I was using various type tools here that I wanted to quickly go to, I could tear this off. And now I could set it anywhere, and I have all these tools available to me to use when needed. So another nice little feature in Illustrator. Now, one thing you may notice is that I have a lighter gray background than you may have with your Illustrator view. Up in Illustrator, there's also an area called Preferences, and this will affect the overall applications in Illustrator, such as changing dynamics of your type, changing dynamics of how you want to measure, how your smart guides look, etc. And this will be the area where you go in for that. And if you look, you can see that you have the user interface here. And when you go to the user interface, you'll notice that the user interface has several different options: dark, medium, light. And I could go to light, and you can see how much lighter this screen becomes for me. And I can also use the slider and adjust it to how I like it. I prefer to use the light gray because I believe I can see the colors more clearly. but again, it's an individual preference. So that's where you would change your user interface. Okay, so we got through the tool panel. And the other thing too is if you'll notice in Illustrator here, when I hover, okay, so get to a few other things here with the layout. You can do what they call a custom tools panel, and you can do this by going to Window, and you go to New Tools. Let me make sure I got that here. Oh, I'm sorry, go up to Tools and then go New Tools Panel. And let's say you wanted a combination of tools that you want to use all the time. So maybe I'm just going to name this, we'll just name it My Tools, I guess, and hit OK. And what will happen is you can actually take some of the tools that you know that you're going to be going back and forth to quite a bit and drag them in to its own little tool panel. And get like 5 here. And so now I have my own little tool panel here that maybe the operations that I was using are going to be ones that I want to use right here. So kind of a nifty little thing that you can do in Illustrator with that. Okay, again, as we talked about with panels, again, every panel does have its different applications. So these are unique to each panel. And again, you will find that when you pull down on the window drop-down menu, and all the different panels can be found in this area as well. Again, in the window menu, you can actually change your workspace. This is kind of a cool little feature where maybe you're working on printing and proofing artwork. This will pull the panels up that are most relevant to that operation. If you're painting, for example, it's going to pull up panels that are essential to that as well. Maybe you're working with web design. It's going to pull up the different panels that work with that. And just as in anything else, you can also create your own workspace. So let's say I have all the panels laid out here and I want them to open up for me when I do my work. I can go ahead and say New Workspace, and I can just call this, I'll just call it My Workspace, I guess, and hit OK. And so now when I go back up to the windows into the workspace area, you can see that I have my workspace listed there as well. And it will stay there until I want it deleted. Okay, another thing, we talked about in the drop-down menu is a view panel, and you can zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, etc. And one thing you'll notice is next to all these different operations, you have keys that you can use, shortcut keys, to get to this application quick. Now, the magnifying glass is down here on the tool panel, but what I find is it's very awkward to have to go back and forth between tools. And so what I like to do is just know these commands that you use quite often are ones to start remembering. And so, for example, Command plus on my keyboard, as you can see, I can zoom in. I go Command minus, I can zoom out. And if I go Command 0, that will actually fit the artwork into my window area. So these are very important commands you can use. One thing about the magnifying glass, so is if you want a specific area to zoom in on, you can actually take your magnifying glass and drag a box around it so that you view in closely to your work. So that's going to be it for this particular discussion on workspace area. We'll continue with a few more operations in the next screencast. when we will also be getting into lesson chapter 2, and that will be on